all, let me assert my firm belief that the only thing we have to fear is fear itself. Nameless, unreasoning, unjustified terror.
Shut up. Fade him out. Fade him away. Unjustified terror. Is that like Terrah? Terror? Terror? What terror? The speech is 1930. Oh, no. 1933 speech, right in the depths of the Great Depression. Hey, bot, is this type of critical analysis even approved by you? Will even be allowed? You're going to smack me down with another hate the beach offense? Hate beach offense. The Beach, Leonardo DiCaprio Da Vinci movie, The Beach. This is confusing the heck out of the bot. I thought these were the individuals that gave me the right to speak. Not that I would have it under natural law or something as a sovereign human being. The FDR, the Founding Fathers, how ironic. These are the individuals supposedly granted me the right to speak. But when I apply the First Amendment of the Constitution of the United States, Amendment number 1 of the Bill of Rights, I get smacked down. Smackdown. Hate the beach offense. Hate the beach offense. I should just do the Matt Damon scene from Good Will Hunting. Yana, in this case the Google bot, Henry Ward Beecher, province of the Plymouth Pulpit, 1887. He's making a mockery of the courtroom. Sir, I have the right to speak, sir. Granted to me, not by natural law as a sovereign human being, but granted to me by the Constitution of the United States. Liberty, in case you've forgotten, is the soul's right to breathe. And when it cannot take a full breath, laws are girded too tight. What does he say? The ibid says, man is a cinco. I don't know what that is. Ibid, I don't know what that is either. I know what an ibis is. It's a bird that lands on the beach in Miami. You know in Monopoly you get the get out of jail free card? Well, yeah, that's one of the greatest things you can get. You hold on to that. Maybe they can grant, I don't know what they call citizens, not our terminology. Maybe they can grant us little freedom of speech credits. Maybe if we take trash bags out on the side of highways, do that sort of work, clean up parks or whatever, we can get social credits. And then they're going to smack me down and say, I can't criticize an FDR speech. I could just pull this little card out, man with or without a monocle on it, and say, I have a right to speak today. I'm going to put oh my gosh, we got to let him speak. He's going to hand in his Monopoly card. Maybe we can do it like that. First Amendment of the Bill of Rights doesn't exist anymore. So, in FDR's own tone and cadence, I lay down the following charges against him. That he was not out to motivate a populace of great unwashed and proletariats from 1984, but retroactively back to 1933, not out to motivate a single rat in a sewer, but to create an egregore of fear in the terms of a personification of a concept that should not be personified. And I propose that egregore has grown and lived and thrived through Bill Clinton's sexual exploits, through the Obama administration, right through the retarded president of today. I did a video about this topic, I don't know, like 4 years ago, maybe 3 or 4 years ago, about potential egregore creation per the famous FDR speech, personifying fear itself, creating it's like Monsters, Inc., and they're all piled in the closet. And what's this new one in here? Well, FDR just gave a speech, and now there's a new monster in the closet. Fear itself. Not that fear didn't exist, of course, but to put it out in that way, making the 10 seconds of that speech one of the most famous 10 seconds in American history, the way it's said is slightly concerning. And I didn't get to talk about this in the freevoice.io video, the last one on Sunday, about fear. So I figured we'll do a whole video in and of itself on personification of something that should not be brought into existence into the Monsters, Inc. closet. 2 minutes of absolute basics for anybody relatively new, or who knows, that was so insane, maybe nobody followed what I just said. I'm not going to go back and re-record anything. The Not Milk is this evil thing in this reality system that's in the shadows that recruits an army of minions, like its own little adjustment bureau, another movie with Matt Damon, to go out and implement its aims, goals, strategies, tactics, etc. Its desired outcome is one sentence, but it's not the purpose of this video. To disrupt a real being like you and me, we don't know how many of us there are here, from fulfilling the reason it came into this plane of existence, to disrupt its spiritual journey. Okay, we'll talk about that some other time. But if that is its role, how is it paid? This thing here, its minions and itself as a collective, how is it rewarded? How does it feed? What does it eat? How does it grow and propagate? Well, this is not my term. I don't know where the term louche came from, but it's still applicable. We've been observing this thing for a very long time, and it works overtime on steroids times a billion to move populations into certain frequencies that it likes. The big one, of course, is fear. We're talking about the FDR speech, but there are related frequencies that it seems to feed from. Resonances, is that a word that it likes? Tones related to fear, stress, anxiety, worry, a whole host of things. And it moves and massages populations around, and it appears, just from us observing the asshole dark and what it does and its endless tactics to move populations into these frequencies, that if it can get a population right in that sweet spot, then to the not milk, it's like, I don't know, winning a free ticket to get into an all-you-could-eat buffet at the Golden Corral. It can go in and just pile its plates up with mashed potatoes and mac and cheese, and if you can get that population right in that sweet spot, it can propagate, it can feed, and look how it has grown. This asshole dark thing is not what it was in the 60s and 70s and 80s. It's completely normal, everything that's happened to those on the ship of fools. But to us, it is a monster that has grown. But in what ways can it feed off the energy of real people? Maybe it can get a little energy from other types here, or NPCs, but I assure you there's a certain type of being here, probably people like us, that it really tries to feed from. I would think people like us produce more energy, but we'll talk about that some other time. So there are these things, I'm no expert on it, called egregores, thought form demons, tulpas, created entities of some kind that can extract energy. I'm no expert on it, but this is the reason many would say that there is an egregore associated with a rock band like the Rolling Stones. And in a crowded concert of 80,000 people, just pouring out their love for the decrepit man bouncing around, jumping around to Jumping Jack Flash. It feeds in some way, and then it's a symbiotic, potentially, relationship with the Rolling Stones. That's why he's not up there with 2 knee braces and a broken hip and being wheeled around on a gurney, and he's jumping around out there like Jumping Jack Flash, and he doesn't. That's why they called Walking Death in 1978. And it's 2023. I ain't going to Wikipedia, but I think he's still running around out there. So maybe they get some energy back from the tulpa, whatever the thing that collects up the energy. But maybe the not milk itself maybe doesn't just plug in directly. It might not just have an army of minions, very serious minions that do some hardcore pipe-hitting business like Henry Kissinger, and then it has its buffoon and clown minions like Alec Baldwin. It also could have an army of egregores of sorts, and maybe, they're used, I don't know, maybe locally to collect up the energy. How local or how close in proximity does the egregore need to be to the energy source? I mean, who knows? I don't want to know. I don't really care at this point, other than seeing that it likely exists. Even if it doesn't exist in this exact form, we know that this asshole dark not milk system is an energy feeder. I mean, there's just no other explanation for why it does business the way it does. It's always trying to move populations into a certain state or frequency. So look at the World of Warcraft. They started about 2 weeks ago between, as South Philly would say, Israel and Cheesesteak Wit, and Hamas, Gaza, West Bank, the Butcher Baker, and Candlestick Maker. Look, many would say it's just about energy. They never do things just for one reason. This is an evil, genius, hardcore, pipe-hitting asshole. It always gets 3 or 4 things out of what it does, especially the big shit, like what went down or started to go down about 2 weeks ago between Hamas, the Butcher, the Baker, and the Candlestick Maker. They do things for multiple reasons, but some would say energy, and whatever it gets out of it is the primary reason. Well, what does it need to have unseen egregores locally on the ground? Did it send its fleet of egregores out there 3 weeks ago, the way they brought a FEMA in Monday night on the 10th, right? Was that a truth drop For egregores, they came in early. They come in and the egregores said, I'm well rested because I stayed at a Holiday Inn Express last night. All the egregores have to get out there early. Who knows? We'll never know. I don't want to know. I'm sure you don't want to know. But there's no doubt what, say, went down or is still going down starting about 2 weeks ago, probably a little bit more at this point, is about energy. And the theory here that's being floated is, well, it needs to collect up that energy somehow, and people aren't talking for years and years about these things called egregores for no reason. Well, if it's needing the egregores to collect up energy, who knows exactly how that works, who cares? Well, at some point it needs to create them. And then we go back to the FDR speech, which, when you think about it, should give real people the creeps. So let's start with the absolute basics and build from there. I think most of you would agree, almost all the old guard would agree, that the famous line, all we have to fear is fear itself. I'll do it one more time. All we have to fear is, pauses forever, is fear itself. He pauses forever on purpose, of course. It was intended to be a Humpty Dumpty or a stuffed Lenin. So item number one, I would say all the old guard believes it is a Humpty Dumpty or a stuffed Lenin. And what that means is its fame and notoriety is carried through time artificially. And whenever populations forget, they'll be reminded. It's not that great. It's one of the most most famous speeches in American history, top 50 of all time, throughout all of history in the world. Ranks up there with the Lincoln's Gettysburg Address. There's a reason it's so famous, but you know what? Here's what makes something a stuffed Lenin or a Humpty Dumpty. Is it really that great? All we have to fear is fear itself. Or what if I said that, like running for student council or something in 6th grade, the whole middle school would stand, well, that would be elementary school, so just stand up, oh, God, oh, can we make him student council president now? It's not, you know what? It's not good enough. It's not that great. People would, anybody normal is in the audience, he'd be like snoring and shit. It's not that great. Therefore, per the fact that it's a stuffed Lenin or Humpty Dumpty, means it's artificially carried through time. It's just not good enough to be as famous and popular as it is. And most people think it's about World War II and the Pearl Harbor. No, it was 1933. The Depression. Matt, it's famous because it was right before World War II. No, it wasn't. Middle of the Great Depression, 1933. And if they were out to make an egregore of sorts, well, the fact that it was 1933 probably played a part in its grim war. So after step one or stage one here, I think I can speak for most of you, that it should not be as famous as it is, because it's just not that good. Therefore, if it is so famous, what was actually trying to be accomplished in that segment of the speech, or in the speech itself? I've read through it. It's not very long, but of course, that is the key moment. There's almost no part of that speech that's ever played other than that moment. When something is pushed that hard, decade after decade, what was actually accomplished or out to be accomplished? This is where it starts giving real people the creeps. So let me read 15 seconds on either side of the famous soundbite. The whole thing is creepy, but parts that aren't typically played, other than the soundbite of the only thing we have to fear is fear itself. So the entire 30 seconds of the transcript is, and I'll do it in my voice, I'm not going to do the voice again, don't worry. This is preeminently the time to speak the truth, the whole truth, frankly and boldly. Nor need we shrink from honesty facing conditions in our country today. This great nation will endure as it has endured, and revive and will prosper. So first of all, let me assert my firm belief that the only thing we have to fear is fear itself, nameless, unreasoning, unjustified terror which paralyzes needed efforts to convert retreat into advance. In every dark hour of our national life, a leadership of frankness and vigor has met with that understanding and support of the people themselves, which is essential to victory. I have a lot of issues with the whole segment. I mean, who would write like this unless something else is going on? Yeah. Okay, how insane would this be if anybody stumbled upon this video? He states, this is preeminently the time to speak the truth, the whole truth, frankly and boldly. He's giving the speech. This is preeminently the time to speak the truth. I wish I was in the audience. You could raise your hand. Was there a question? I'm supposed to be able to. No, you ain't. You're going to address my question now. Why are you saying this is the time to speak the truth, sir? I thought we were supposed to be under the assumption as the American people that you're always going to tell us the truth. Why? You're pointing out that this is the time to speak the truth, which implies, sir, that everything else that you and your politician brethren say are all lies. Well, we kind of knew that, but thank you for admitting it. Who would call out that this is the time to speak the truth? It implies that every other thing that's coming out of his mouth for all days through the presidency, he was a president through like 1945, would be lies, which is actually a truth drop. Then the sentence right after confirms the exact sentiment of the sentence before, completely unnecessary and getting creepier. Nor need we shrink from honesty facing the conditions in our country. Nor need we shrink from honesty. Again, if I was in the audience of the inaugural address, say I was in the first 10 rows, I would interrupt him, stand up, raise my hand. And, what are you talking about, sir? Who's shrinking from honesty? Your last two sentences taken back to back imply some very disturbing things, sir, that you and your ilk are going to tell lies throughout all 3 terms of your presidency, and you're only being honest now, or you're trying to apply be honest to the American people. Well, who's shrinking from being honest? And who wrote your speech? Nor need we shrink from honesty. Fire your speechwriter immediately, sir. People are being honest. They know they're in the middle of the Great Depression. Parents aren't sending their kids to bed hungry and saying, no, you're not hungry, you're full. Just think about steaks and you'll be full. No, they're saying, I'm sorry, kids, there's no dinner tonight. You'll have to go to bed. They're being honest with their kids. They're not saying, look at that plate and imagine a steak, sir. So you must be talking about yourself, that this is the only time in your presidency we're going to get some honesty? Next sentence. This great nation will endure as it has endured, will revive, and will prosper. Live long and prosper. You think there's some people in the first few rows that held their hand up and separated their fingers out like Spock? We've identified the people from Vulcan. Get them out of here. Okay, that's not what I wanted to focus on. This great nation will endure as it has endured. What's he talking about? This isn't ancient Rome, sir. This isn't the Tartarian Empire. At that point, it would be 1776, 1876, 160 years. The nation's been around 160 years. Europeans would say, that ain't shit. This great nation will endure as it has endured. It hasn't endured shit. Go talk to people that live in Moscow or in the bad neighborhoods of St. Petersburg, Russia. These are some old damn neighborhood, maybe certain sections of Prague. 160 years as it has endured. We ain't endured shit, sir. Do you think anybody stood up and said that? We will revive and will prosper. Well, of course the nation will revive and prosper because the entire Depression itself was cooked up and planned by you people. I would have been thrown out a long time ago. Next sentence, and this is the heart of the matter. So first of all, let me assert my firm belief that the only thing we have to fear is fear itself. Nameless, unreasoning, unjustified terror, which paralyzes needed efforts to convert retreat into advance. So it seems like he's giving an uplifting speech, right? But what he's done, he's implanted a little subliminal message into the minds of millions that this thing exists. Fear itself, he's personified it, maybe made it into an egregore. He's told people, consciously, subconsciously, or unconsciously, in the same back end of the sentence, that this fear personified is nameless, unreasoning, unjustified terror, which paralyzes needed efforts to convert retreat into advance. This is like Edward Bernays' Psychology for Dummies, or the rival book, Psychology for Complete Idiots. It's like, hey, Joe, down the end of the bar. What, Matt? Don't think of a white elephant. Then what do you just think of a white elephant? It's the old principle in golf where you just walk up to somebody before they approach the tee with their driver and say, the last thing you want to do, make sure you tell your body not to slice into those trees. And Judge Schmale says, I never slice. Now, you implant that in their head. Oh, that's right. I don't want to slice into those trees. So the body gets the message. Slice into the trees, whoosh, right in the trees. FDR's not even saying this evil thing exists. He doesn't say to walk away from it, to reject it, even personifying it is dangerous. It is internally dangerous, Mr. Ambassador, to have our submarines so close to yours. It is dangerous to have hundreds of millions of people personifying fear. The yellow power of fear will come back in the Green Lantern someday and destroy the Earth. No, he doesn't even do that. He doesn't even say, well, okay, I've personified it, but now all you people reject it. Don't succumb to it. No, he actually subliminally tells everybody to accept it. Let me assert my firm belief. The only thing we have to fear is fear itself. The only thing we have to, isolate? What is the Marcus Aurelius of the thing, Clarice? Isolate the words. Have to fear is fear. Isolate it, take everything else out. What is heard by the subconscious? We're analyzing the FDR speech. We have overcome our fear. None of this spell works on us. Let me just say that and move on. It says, if you isolate everything else, have to fear is fear. That is what is here. That is what is heard potentially by the subconscious. Then he cements it on the back end. Oh, that thing I just told you to be scared as shit about, it's nameless, he says. It's unreasoning. It's unjustified terror. And it paralyzes the needed efforts to convert retreat into advance. So everybody goes off to work, and the subliminal message is, you poor devils are paralyzed to build my Hoover Dam. Don't think this is not how they do business, guys. Could you imagine how insane this would be if anybody, say a historian from Villanova University, stumbled upon this presentation? What Gus is saying is they absolutely know the way the conscious mind will interpret this, listening to the radio, versus potentially what the subconscious or unconscious mind will take away from it. So twice he says, I'm going to tell you the truth, frankly and boldly. All right? And we're not going to shrink from being honest here. He reaffirms it. And the great nation will endure, blah, 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 because we cooked it all up. That is setting up the sentence to come in the mind. I'm about to tell you the truth. So pay attention, he's saying. That's a setup for the big egregore creating sentence. My firm belief is the only thing we have to fear is fear itself, potentially creating a egregore at that moment because of the hundreds of millions of people listening to the broadcast that in some way just personified fear, made an emotion into a real thing. Okay, that's the term. You know how dangerous it is to write fear itself as a personified, making it a real thing, and then just to be sure everybody takes it away that it is another Monsters, Inc. in the closet, he says it's that thing we just created is nameless. It's unreasoning. It's unjustified terror. And it paralyzes. This is the subliminal message. It paralyzes the needed efforts to convert retreat into advance. Basically just put a paralysis out on the hundreds of millions of people listening. And then after that, the next few words in the next sentence, in every dark hour. It says this is the darkest hour, creating the mood for the egregore that was just created. I don't think I'm misinterpreting this, guys. This is crystal clear for everybody that doesn't have their head up their ass. Then on the very next day, of course, the news cycle started. No doubt about it. People doing the bidding of the not milk in the asshole dark without knowing what they're doing on that frequency, pushing forward in the entire populace how wonderful the speech was and how wonderful and monumentous, if that's even a word, that part of the speech was. You know, the press was just all over the next day. Oh, one of the most profound moments in American history. They did this with Obama after he gave the keynote speech or whatever was it for Al Gore or whatever it was, I forget. The next day, the news cycle started. That person that gave that unknown named Barack Obama could be president someday, implanting it into the minds of the populace. And looking back, you're like, well, because he read from a teleprompter, 100 news outlets the next day were saying Barack could be the next president of the United States because he read scrolling words across a screen. He was good at reading scrolling words, so then he could be the next president of the United States. I mean, people should have walked away from politics during the Tricky Dick investigation, but if they weren't sure, they should have been sure after the whole world was saying Barack Obama could be president after he read some words. And the point of this is there's no doubt that the ministry saw to it just days after the speech that everybody was just convinced how wonderful the speech was and how it will go down in American history. No doubt the ministry ran with that. So when Ted bumped into Fred on the street and Caroline bumped into Susie, like, wasn't that FDR speech just wonderful? Oh, what was that key part? The only thing we have to fear is fear itself. Just repeating it over and over. The ministry saw to that, just like it ran around saying Barack Obama could be the next president of the United States. And they made the same mistake then that they do now. They said, wasn't that Franklin Delano Roosevelt? Well, wait, it's Delano. It's Delano or Delano. People still get confused because his wife's Eleanor. It's not Franklin Delano Roosevelt, Franklin Eleanor Roosevelt. It's Delano. And who would give a kid that name? What the heck's Delano? If anybody's not following me, there's a very simple exercise so anybody can understand what I'm talking about. You don't need to be no Harvard and Yale PhD in psychology to understand these first grade tactics that they employ. Let's just say your best friend over here, he confides in you and he's like, he's so angry at his brother-in-law. I don't know, let's just make something up. It doesn't matter what the brother-in-law did, but your best friend is just fuming mad. He wants to go get his hands on him. And, it's like, wait, sit down. Let's have a PBR, a Pabst Blue Ribbon. Let's talk this out. You'd want to calm him down. But do you think this would be a good idea? Let's employ the FDR inaugural speech tactic. Fred, you're angry, aren't you? I'm so angry. I want to... Okay, imagine your anger is sitting across the table from you as a demon. And look, just picture the demon in all clarity. I'm not telling anybody listening to me this. You're telling in this mock presentation your friend Fred this. This is not what you want to do. Imagine the demon. The anger is your demon, and picture it with its fangs. And you saw The Exorcist, right, Fred? And then think that thing lives inside you, and you can't get rid of it. It's part of you. See how that would not be to start personifying it versus saying, Fred, anger is simply an emotion that you have complete control over, that does not control you. Versus that tactic. You think it would be good to personify it, to have Fred this sitting across, drinking his PBR, picturing the demon in all detail that lives inside of him? That's basically what FDR did. I'm not joking. Again, I got no Cambridge and Oxford PhD degree in psychology, but common sense says to personify something that's that dangerous, whatever, the 7 deadly sins, fear, whatever it may be, to personify it as a real thing, to try to give it life or legs, is not what anybody wants to do if they're really looking out for you. So if anything was real, whether, let's say, FDR, Delano, wrote it, and a speechwriter who assists would be like, Franklin, let's just revise this segment here. You see, what you kind of did is you made fear into a real thing, and then you called it nameless terrors. Let's just tell people not to be afraid. Let's remind them that fear can easily be overcome by real people. Let's remind them of their abilities and all the great things we've done. Let's just remove... See, if the world were real, it would have been a 5-minute conversation, and Franklin Delano would have said, yeah, I kind of did turn it into a kind of a monster here. I don't want to scare anybody because I love these people. Yeah, let's revise the line and say, yeah, don't be afraid. We're going to come... It says this is absolutely going to all work, all positives. Not the... Franklin, you see what you're doing here? These are subliminal negatives. And then if the world were real, Franklin would be like, oh, I didn't mean to do that. I love these people. Let's revise the speech. And thank you for your good advice. And if the world were real, that would have been the end of it. And there are other ways to interpret who's in on what or who knows what. It's all a waste of time. I mean, somebody might say, well, Matt, maybe FDR tried his best. And when the Not Nilk heard it, Fromers tried to warn him. The Not Nilk latched onto it and said, look what FDR did here. It just personified fear. Then it sent out its flying monkeys and minions to isolate that part of the speech with its press and news agencies to tell everybody how wonderful that part is. And Franklin's going, what the hell's going on? I didn't think that part of the speech was so great. We'll argue. Some people, I'm not giving anybody a pass here. He might have been at the end of that creepy table, right at the Bilderberger, home of the Bilderberger. It doesn't matter what FDR knew. I'm more interested in studying Not Nilk, the screen. The little minions, who knows what, at the minion level, who delivers the presidential speeches, does not concern me. Asteroids do not concern me, General. It doesn't concern me what presidents say. The Not Nilk and what it wants from real people is what used to concern me. It doesn't concern me anymore because we see right through the dumb son of a beach. So in summary, for that one person that stumbled upon this video, probably from Butte, Montana, is it Butte, Butte, or Butt? It should be Butt, Montana. Here, let me summarize it for you, because I know you're saying, oh, you're getting a little concerned, like, is this part of YouTube for real? I mean, this person, it sounds insane, but the next sentence sounds relatively intelligent. You're wrestling what's called cognitive dissonance, Mr. Man from Butt. Let me summarize it for you. It's very simple. There's something here Christian calls Satan. I call it something else. I don't call it a Kaiser blade. I call it a sling blade. I call it the asshole dark, the knot milk, or the screen. That thing works through minions that are on its frequency. The job of it collectively, the dark, is to disrupt the spiritual journey of a real person. You probably are a real person, Mr. Man in Butt. If the rest of the people listening to this are real spiritual beings trying to do something, and we have an adversary here. So in this case, see, the adversary needs to be rewarded, and it feeds on the frequencies that real people put out, the frequencies that it tricks real people to give it, like stress, fear, hate, anger, worry, and about 1,000 other things it tricks populations into giving it. And it feeds on it. Like the way you would eat Mr. Man in Butt, you would eat a Twinkie, it eats energy of some kind, but the negative resonance that it produces in real populations. So what is being proposed is potentially a few weeks before the inaugural speech from FDR, they said, well, we're going to have via radio and the adoption of radio, we're going to have an estimated 200 million people listening closely and intently. Oh, we can get something really good and dark out of that. What should we do? Well, we can't do it all. It's got to be a relatively short speech or people will tune out. Well, how's our fear egregore doing? Well, we're going to need it, especially when we start World War II. The fear egregore needs, look at it, it's sickly. They said we either need a whole new one or this sickly fear egregore over here needs a whole new injection of power. How would we raise the power we need for it? Because we're going to need it for World War II. It's like, 200 and some million people are expected to listen. Let's phrase the speech in such a way where we personify fear. I think if we observe the sickly little fear egregore as people are listening, I think we'll be able to see it absorbing power through the ether. And it'll become like all of a sudden from a sickly little thing to like the demon character at the end of Tom Cruise's Legend. Then it'll grow up to the size of King Kong just in a few seconds after people listen to the speech. Because real people are reality input-output devices. And then as the press, our flying monkeys and minions, continue to reinforce in the minds of the population how wonderful that segment of the speech was, the energy will continue to flow into our fear egregore. In fact, we have it set up so that will come in for decades. We'll completely remind people of the speech over and over again like a stuffed Lenin and carry it artificially through time. We'll have people in the new century, they said in the 30s, thinking about the FDR speech and personifying fear. This fear egregore will always be able to do our bidding. And we, just as a backup, we have a bunch of people willing to go into the pentagram and chanting from the grimoire so we can control it without chains. And after all that, a proviso or a note is in order. That much of what was just presented is a guess, and probably a lot of it is wrong. I mean, for example, I didn't really know that their fear egregore was ailing or sickly. I mean, that's made up or whatever. But in terms of looking at what this thing does, knowing that it needs to move populations into a certain mental state for energy, knowing in some way it needs it, maybe even to survive and feed, that's not made up. That's just obvious at this point. When I said people had to step into the pentagrams and read from their grimoire to control how big the fear egregore would become, I'm just making that up. I don't know how it works. I've never been around nobody reading from no grimoire. But in terms of the basic level of how it works, how it needs to work, it is always about getting populations into a negative state. That ain't made up. That's just obvious at this point. Anybody that doesn't have their head stuck up their ass. So man in Butte that's hopefully still listening to me, I didn't mean to depress you, sir. I didn't mean to bum you out, but you didn't really think that presidents of any Western country were actually working for their own people. Did you think that? Did you think the queens and emperors and kings and earls and dukes of Earl in the past were working for their people as they sharecropped outside the walls. Now, it's what would be the difference today? That's the same group of assholes just carried through time. But I vote them in. Oh, you vote them in, you say. What's your favorite restaurant here in Butt, sir? Pickle Sticks. Okay, Pickle Sticks. Does it have a wide menu of different things that you like? Oh, yeah, it's real good. What if you went into, what'd you call it? Pickle Sticks. What if you went in there and it only had 2 choices on the menu? And it was both things that one thing you really loathed and you hated. The other one you could eat if you really had to get full. You had a full day of work ahead. But what if you knew those 2 menu choices? What was it called? Pickle Sticks. What if it was the cooks and the managers and the owner of the restaurant's favorite foods? What you mean it's their favorite foods? Why would they only put 2 things on a menu and not care about what I want and put their own favorite foods on a menu? 'Cause there ain't nothing else to eat, sir. Where you gonna go? Any other choices? No, this is Butte, Montana. There ain't another restaurant inside of 700 miles. That's exactly what I'm talking about. There ain't nothing else to eat. You go into the restaurant, pick out one of their favorite foods. They don't give a crap. It ain't no Burger King made to order shit. It's what they want. Then you pay for one of them. That's your tax dollars. Then when you get outside in the parking lot, you throw it up. That's how the politicians are after they're elected. They don't give you what you want. They promise something tasty on the menu. Then you throw it up. They don't give you anything that they promised. They give you the opposite. So there's a lot to take in, man. Let me get this straight. You're telling me the political system today is a restaurant with their 2 favorite foods. One I loathe, one I can kind of stomach, I can kind of keep down if I'm lucky. I pay for their favorite foods via my tax dollars. Then after I eat it, it gives me a horrible indigestion or I throw up. Yes, sir, that's exactly what I'm saying. Apply that restaurant example to the polling place next time you're dumb enough to go in one. Thanks for listening.